So my presentation is a part of the project of Krzysztof Niedziałkowski. He is here in the audience because I was probably the one person who had to go to Brussels. But he's here, and if you have questions for Krzysztof, you could also ask something directly to him. Generally, this presentation is a part of a project that focuses on policy making on wealth management in Germany, Poland, and Belarus. And our part is about Poland, the policy-making process in between 1989 and 1998. So our research objectives, we focused on the discursive part of the policy-making process. We studied the process of policy-making on the wealth conservation in conditions of political transformation and emergence of new political actors. That means environmental organizations, like pictured in the bottom picture, for example. Then we trace the recontextualization of argumentation schemes present in the discourse between 1989 and 1998. And we evaluated the deliberativeness of the discussion on wealth management in Poland. In this presentation, I will focus mainly on this first two aspects. And first thing is why we picked such a time span. 1989 is the obvious date of political transformation in Poland, and since 1975, the wolf was considered a game animal in Polish law. In 1991, a new act on nature environment conservation was introduced in Poland, and it created an opportunity to local authorities to introduce local regulations on the wolf protection. So the first was introduced in Poznański province, and then gradually more and more provinces were introducing similar laws, putting the wolf under complete protection. Then in 1995, another regulation was introduced by the Minister of Environment, leading to protection of the species in whole Poland except 3 provinces, that means Suwalskie, Krośnieńskie and Przemyskie, which were the provinces where the numbers of the wolf were the highest at that time. Then in 1997, in August, a new law on lice of damage reparations was introduced, which also included damage made by Canis lupus. And in 1998, a full protection of the wolf in Poland was introduced by Minister Jan Szyszko. So moving on to the theoretical background of our research. First of all, discourse institutionalism. We assume that institutional dynamics originate from the emergence of new ideas, concepts, narratives in society that institutionalize in social practices, which affect social outcomes. We also used discourse historical analysis as an approach that focuses, that puts emphasis on argumentation, probably in the highest degree from the CDA approaches. And with use of this approach, we analyze text and utterances manifested in various fields of social actions, for example, policy making, forming of public opinion, etc., etc. As something that supports the discourse historical analysis, we use argumentative analysis in the post-Habermasian way. That means Kopper-Schmidt, and also elaborated later by Reisig. And then we used Martin Hajer's concepts of storyline and discourse-coalitions for establishing a specific group of actors that were present in the discourse. The methodology. We collected data from text with visible argumentation schemes. We excluded text which were published in unchanged form in multiple sources. Such things happened in some cases. And we totally made a corpus of totally 80 texts, which included press articles from leading Polish journals specializing in hunting, forest management, and nature conservation, scientific articles and books, interviews, political speeches, parliamentary questions and minister responses, laws and regulations, including their justifications. We tried to ensure the highest level of multi-perspectivity of the sources, as it is a crucial element for a proper discourse historical analysis. And then we coded for argumentation schemes, that means for argument content, and claims, topoi, etc. The three key concepts for our analysis. First, the argumentation, which we understand after Kopperschmidt as a non-violent pattern of problem solving, which manifests itself in a more or less regulated sequence of speech acts, which altogether form a complex and more or less coherent network of statement and or utterances. The argumentation served the methodological challenging of or justification of validity claims such as truth and normative rightness, and for that purpose we used the Kienpointner's simplified model of argumentation, which includes the arguments, the claims, and the conclusion rule, that means topos, which links both of these elements. Then a concept drawn from Martin Hajer, storyline, which is a narrative on social reality through which elements from many different domains are combined, and that provide actors with a set of symbolic references that suggest a common understanding. And discourse-coalitions, which are groups of actors attracted to a particular set of storylines. So the discourse coalition in the wolf conservation discourse in Poland could be divided basically on two coalitions. That means the coalition for protecting the wolf and coalition for hunting the wolf. We could not apply the professional division of the environmental discourses in Poland by Rancew Sikora, because the four traditional groups present in this discourse sometimes overlap themselves. For example, one can be at the same time environmental scientist and hunter, or environmental activist and environmental scientist. But some linguistic features were present in text by members of such groups. For example, foresters were mostly focused on the economic interests, hunters were focused on tradition, the scientists put more emphasis on scientific evidence, etc., etc. An interesting example is, for example, Minister Szyszko, who was at the same time environmental scientist, authorist, and apparently a hunter. Moving on to storylines. The first storyline was present in the protection proponent coalition. Poland is responsible for the future of wolves. It is mostly based, the arguments in such storyline were mostly based on topoi of law and international agreements, or the national laws served as a kind of authority. And the topoi of responsibility, where the responsibility is put on the government or the society on the local and the national level. The storyline was used through the whole period, but in different phases addressed to different areas lacking wolf protection. For example, in between 1995 and 1998, it was used mostly to put pressure on the authorities of the regions, the provinces where hunting on wolf was still permitted. Okay, so the next storyline also was present in the discourse coalition of the proponents of wolf protection. It was also present to the whole period and was manifested through argumentation schemes based on topic of danger, abuse, terrible place, and disaster. And protection was seen as the only way to ensure species recovery. This particular storyline was also based on some certain sub-storylines as referring to the number of wolves decreasing drastically in communist Poland, where wolf became like nearly extinct. Then the disruption that hunting makes in the recovery of wolf populations. Then the partial protections seen as not limiting hunting enough, and an accusation towards hunters that they overestimate the wolf numbers in Poland. The next storyline focuses on environmental benefits that outweigh minor problems with livestock depredation. It was present throughout 1989 and 1998. In the first phase, even actors supporting wolf hunting also recognized the positive role of the wolf. And the protection proponents relied on the story, especially the storyline, especially when arguing for protection of the wolf in phases 3 and 4 in provinces where the problem of wolves attacking livestock was probably highest in was probably present in the highest degree. For this storyline, certain storylines were used. The wolf was considered an efficient natural selector of other game animals. Also, the proponents of this storyline stated that wolves rarely attack livestock. Then the research proves that the wolf has a positive role in the ecosystems, and the last thing is that ecosystems in Western countries could benefit from wolf recovery in Poland. Okay, so another 3 storylines we identified in our analyzed text were used mostly as the by the proponents of hunting for the wolf. And the first is that wolf is not endangered in Poland and it can be hunted. It was mostly used to encourage the authorities to relax hunting restrictions, and it was based, and the argumentation was mostly based on topoi of disproportionate means and topoi of favorable time, which suggests that the wolf population is stable, that partial protection is enough for Polish conditions, and that international nature conservation laws do not conform with Polish conditions. This storyline was also represented by some former proponents of protection, like Professor Zbigniew Głowaciński, that before 1995 were for the wolf protection. And they, after introduction, the protection laws in the almost whole Poland, except these 3 provinces, some of the wildlife biologists argued for the protection laws to remain in the form they were established in 1995. So storyline E, hunters can manage wolf population. It's specific for a discourse coalition of hunters, of course, and hunting researchers. It is mostly based on topoi of danger or threat or fallacy at consequentium. It is often supported with accounts of hunters, direct contact with wolves. The hunters often used ad hominem arguments against the wildlife biologists and environmental activists that they don't have enough contact with wolves and enough experience to actually decide on the policy making process on wolf in Poland. They also said that the role of wolf as a natural selector is overestimated, and the danger was understood as the hunting limitations could encourage poaching in Poland.
And 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. I have only 2 slides left, so it's okay. So the last storyline is about the wolf is being a dangerous predator, and the wolf should be hunted. It was also used mostly by hunters and game biologists to contradict the storyline C, that the wolf is very useful for ecosystems. It was used to its use was intensified in the later phases and conserved mostly the Krosno province, where the presence of wolf was the highest. It was supported by the examples of wolf attacks in Krosno province, and was based on the topic of uselessness or disadvantage, and the topic of terrible place, where the Krosno province was considered the terrible place. So the sub-storylines include wolves attacking livestock, compensations which were introduced in 1997 are not sufficient mean and leading to financial abuses by livestock owners. Then a storyline about hunting increases the distance between the wolf and livestock, and about environmentalists ignoring the interests of local farmers, and about fear as a factor that justifies hunting for wolves. Okay, so our findings include that every legislative change on wolf conversation mark a discursive shift in the policy making process on the wolf. For example, certain groups focus on different regions and use different argument schemes to justify protection or hunting for wolf. Then certain actors could have related to different storylines in different periods. The example of Professor Głodziński is probably the most in place in this case. Third, the discourse coalition supporting wolf conservation successfully challenged the dominant vision of wolves by creating a new counter-discourse and promoting it with a wide range of argumentation schemes, leading to a bottom-up institutional change. And the last one, the discourse coalition supporting the status quo lacked discursive power to protect existing institutions of wolf hunting. Okay, thank you for your attention.